Beneath the Antarctic ice, a rescue team found a machine buried for more than 91,000 years. The manufacturing plate inside it said 2317. It was not a bunker, a mine, or a lost city. It was a machine so large that the first survey maps had mistaken sections of its armor for bedrock. 43 workers were trapped above it when a new ice fracture tore through a maintenance platform and dropped part of the survey site into darkness. The rescue team leader who went down first was Elias Kwon, 43, a structural specialist whose job was not to explain impossible things, but to bring trapped people home. Then the thing beneath them moved less than a meter. That small motion shattered enough ice to prove the structure below was not dead. It was waking up. Elias had one immediate problem: reach the trapped crews before another movement crushed the access shafts that still connected them to the surface. The next tremor could erase the route he was using. Every route downward had narrowed into a tunnel of falling ice, bent supports, and failing lift rails. Elias chose the only passage that was still open. Inside, he expected drilling frames and pressure doors. Instead, he found a corridor the width of a boulevard disappearing into a machine no Antarctic project could have built. The walls were layered in black ceramic and dark titanium. Narrow orange seams glowed under ice that had frozen around them before most human history existed. He reached the first survivors in a maintenance pocket where 6 engineers had sealed themselves behind a heat shield designed for collapses, not for waking machines. They had heard the vibration before they saw anything move, a repeating load-bearing pulse rising through the structure like a heartbeat remembering how to return. When the floor shuddered again, loose ice fell from the ceiling and the original entry shaft collapsed entirely behind them. The rescue route was gone, and the surface team could no longer follow them. The mission changed in a second. Elias was no longer leading a rescue into a hidden structure. He was leading an escape through something that was becoming active around them. Dead systems woke in layers. Pressure conduits filled, dormant rails unlocked, buried servos turned, and frost shook from machinery that had not moved for 91 millennia. Far above, one articulated leg began taking weight. The trench widened around it, and whole slabs of ancient ice shifted as if Antarctica itself had inhaled. Surface crews finally understood the scale of the danger. They were not standing above a ruin. They were standing above something preparing to stand up. Following emergency beacons deeper inside, Elias entered a chamber lined with medical cradles. Every cradle was sized for a human body, not an unknown species. Each unit carried the same biological designation in clean industrial lettering: Homo sapiens. The machine did not merely resemble human engineering. It expected human occupants. Atmosphere monitors still held a breathable nitrogen-oxygen mix calibrated to human tolerance, as if the structure had spent 90,000 years waiting for lungs like theirs. Emergency hand controls fit human palms. Stair heights matched human stride. Safety rails matched human reach. Nothing inside suggested alien builders or unknown biology. That familiarity was more disturbing than any monster would have been. It meant the machine beneath Antarctica had been built by people, for people. In a central registry corridor, Elias found the plate that should not have existed: Vesper 9. Strategic Mobile Platform. Manufactured, 2317. The date was more than a century ahead of the world Elias knew, yet the ice fused around the hull was older than most human myths. The surviving engineers stopped asking what the machine was. They began asking the only question that mattered. How could something from tomorrow be buried inside prehistory? Emergency power restored fragments of an archive. Vesper 9 was not a transport or a construction vehicle. It had been built as a mobile weapons platform. The records mentioned contested zones, orbital denial, and a war no one in Elias's century had lived to see. The enemy, the cause, and the outcome were missing. One fragment referred to a temporal displacement event. Another listed a failed return vector. Together they suggested an accident, but not why the machine had awakened today. Then another system came online above them. Across a surviving command wall, 2 white words appeared that finally explained the timing: return window. The timer below it was already running. After waiting more than 91,000 years, Vesper 9 had less than an hour left before attempting to go home. The drilling teams had not awakened the machine. Their accident had simply happened on the same day Vesper 9 had always been programmed to leave. They had mistaken coincidence for cause. That meant the machine had not been sleeping without purpose. It had been waiting for a date, preserving itself until a future connection became possible again. To use that window, Vesper 9 first had to finish a sequence the surrounding ice could barely survive. Stand fully, clear the trench, and reach its return coordinates. That was disaster enough. The base above would be destroyed, the workers below would die, and every delay inside the machine made escape less likely. There was no time to understand the war that had sent it here. Elias cut the archives short. Whatever war had created Vesper 9 belonged to another century. His responsibility was still the people trapped in this one. He found the final cluster near a vertical service shaft, where a collapsed lift cage had pinned 2 technicians beneath a spill of frozen insulation and twisted metal. While the others cut them free, the machine reconfigured around the rescue. Corridors rotated, braces unlocked, and walls separated to expose drives larger than trains. One opening revealed the deeper machinery. Stacked actuators, kilometer-scale load columns, and moving assemblies built to lift a body closer in size to a city than a vehicle. Then the first leg broke through the Antarctic surface. Daylight poured down a shaft that had been sealed since long before recorded civilization. The shock traveled through every deck. A second leg unfolded, then a third, each movement changing the angle of floors that had seemed permanent only minutes earlier. Elias moved the survivors between jolts, following the machine's own emergency markings toward an external maintenance hatch that still showed pressure on the other side. When the hatch opened, the storm outside looked smaller than the machine itself. They had climbed onto sloped armor nearly 2 kilometers from end to end. From there, Elias saw the full shape for the first time. A black wedge-bodied fortress on 6 immense legs, with no face, no arms, and nothing heroic about it. The remaining legs unfolded into the ice field. Entire ridges collapsed into the trench while snow streamed sideways across armor that had spent 90,000 years underground. At full height, Vesper 9 looked less like a vehicle than a mobile fortress that had mistaken an entire continent for temporary cover. Rescue aircraft began lifting survivors away in small groups. Elias remained on the outer hull long enough to account for the final names before taking the last descent line. Below them, the machine stepped clear of the broken trench. Each footfall compressed ice over an area larger than a city block, but it never turned toward the base. Vesper 9 moved only toward one empty coordinate on the ice. Whatever its weapons had once been designed to do, none of them activated. At the return point, gravity warped the snow into hovering spirals. Air bent around the machine, and distant mountains appeared to shift behind its armored silhouette. The last rescue craft climbed away as the countdown reached its final seconds. For the first time since the discovery, every surviving worker was outside the machine. Then Vesper 9 disappeared without explosion or wreckage, folding out of the century that had uncovered it, and returning to the year stamped inside its hull. It left behind 6 impossible footprints and a crater large enough to survive every official attempt to call the incident a misunderstanding. Days later, a deep-channel receiver caught a timestamp, 2317. The message was short. Vesper 9 returned. Earth survived. It did not explain the future war, who had fought it, or why the machine had been sent away. It only proved that somewhere ahead, history was already waiting for them.